Welcome back to Lost channel. My name is Anton Vieltsin. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the Southern District of California, here in San Diego. You're now watching the 6th video in a multi-part series dealing with conspiracy law. In the first video, I gave you an overview. Then we talked about Pinkerton liability, the elements of the crime. We talked about joinder and maybe strategic severance between co-conspirators and their trials. And now we're getting into the fun stuff. Defenses. This is what everyone always wants to talk about. Defenses to conspiracy charges. And in this video, we'll focus on one of those, withdrawal, meaning getting out of the conspiracy and no longer being responsible for other co-conspirators' actions. Thank you for joining me once again in discussing conspiracy law. This is a multi-part series and you're watching the 6th video. Of course, we're talking about independent cases and you can really watch this series out of order. So it's okay for you to stay with me on this video. But of course, after you finish it, I encourage you to go back into part 1, watch that overview, and go through the process logically. It makes more sense. But let's go ahead and talk about withdrawal as a defense to getting out of the conspiracy. That's what it means, withdrawal. And we're going to focus on one case, United States versus Sharovsky, which is a 2000 case. Shelly and her husband were living with Mr. Enriquez at Mr. Enriquez's auto repair shop. They were heroin addicts and they were selling heroin to make by. Essentially, Mr. Enriquez would give them money and give them heroin to live in the repair shop. On March 19, 1997, a confidential informant purchases 1.22 grams of heroin from Mr. Enriquez. A few days or weeks later, on April 1st, 1997, the same confidential informant negotiated another purchase. Enriquez instructed Shelly to make the purchase or make the sale. Shelly meets with a confidential informant and sells him 5.4 grams of heroin. So Shelly is now part of this conspiracy to distribute narcotics, namely heroin. At some point, she decides to get clean, get out of the conspiracy. So she calls her mother and tells her that she wants to get away. So Shelly's mother arrives and gets her out of this repair shop. At that point, Shelly had a heated argument with Enriquez's wife. We can presume that Enriquez and his wife are all in the same conspiracy because they're all negotiating these sales. It is one big conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Shelly has a heated argument with his wife and tells her that she wants to get out. She doesn't want to be part of this conspiracy anymore. And why is it heated? Well, because the wife tells Shelly that if she decides to leave, she cannot come back. Once their ties are tied or ripped, they're out. She's no longer allowed to get back into the conspiracy. So she leaves and has no contact at all with Enriquez or his wife. Between the time she left and her arrest a few months later, Enriquez makes a few other sales. He sells 221 grams and then later 147 grams of heroin to the same informant. Of course, all of them get charged with a conspiracy to distribute, and Shelly has her trial, her day in court. There she argues that she withdrew from the conspiracy. Why does she make that argument? So remember, in the federal system, the amount of time that you're facing are guideline driven. We always look at the sentencing guidelines, which are published every few years, that describes every single crime. And it tells the judge how much sentence, how much time should the person receive for a particular crime. If you remember, I described earlier in some of my videos the sentencing table that has offense levels on the left as rows and the columns are criminal history. Somebody with more criminal history will do more time for the same crime as somebody who doesn't have any criminal history. The intersection on that table are months in prison. Now, the offense levels are calculated, if we're talking about conspiracy to distribute narcotics, based on the quantity of narcotics, meaning how much narcotics were being sold. So if we look at the sentencing guidelines under section 2D1.1, there's a table that has all sorts of drugs, and it tells you the amounts and what the offense level should be for that particular sale. Now, the quantity, like I wrote here, controls the offense level. But if we also look at section 1B1.3 that describes relevant conduct, it specifically tells us there that of course you'll be responsible for the whole conspiracy, not just your sale. The whole conspiracy is the relevant conduct. It also tells you specifically that if you're part of the conspiracy, you're not responsible for co-conspirators' prior sales, even if you had knowledge about them. Now the question becomes, are you responsible for the sales that come after you withdraw from the conspiracy? Why does that matter? Well, in Shelley's case, she did distribute 5.4 grams of heroin. There's the 1.22 grams of heroin sale as well. But what about these other two sales, the 221 grams and 147 grams? And if you notice, these are much larger sales than the previous ones. Is she responsible for those sales even though she withdrew? Well, the question becomes, did she even withdraw from that conspiracy? Here's what the appellate court says. The defendant is presumed to continue having involvement in the conspiracy unless substantial affirmative showing of a withdrawal, abandonment, or defeat of the conspiratorial purpose. What does that mean? You have to withdraw, abandon it, or maybe make it even worse. For example, cooperate with the government and tell them, hey, there's this conspiracy going on. I'm out of it. I'm telling you about it. But withdrawal could be also where you simply get out of it. You tell other co-conspirators that you no longer want to be part of the conspiracy. How does that work? It has to be inconsistent conduct, reasonably calculated to reach co-conspirators. So here's the question becomes, in Shelley's case, did she withdraw? Did she tell her co-conspirators in a reasonable way that she withdrew? And the appellate court said, yes, here's what we know. Number one, she told her mother that she wants to get away. Number two, she had the heated argument with Enriquez's wife. We know that she didn't have that conversation with the head of the conspiracy, Enriquez himself, but we can presume that the wife, being probably the number two in the conspiracy, probably told Enriquez that Shelley got out. Finally, she has no contact with the co-conspirators between the time she left and when everyone got arrested. How do we know she had no contact? Well, of course we can look at her phone, but even better in Shelley's case, she went into a drug treatment program. And so she was in this facility not communicating with anyone, including the co-conspirators. And because of that, the appellate court said this is a perfect example where somebody withdraws from the conspiracy. And for that, they send the case back to the district court level, saying that she should be resentenced because she should be held responsible only for the sales while she was in the conspiracy, not the ones after she withdrew. Hopefully you now understand a little bit more about the defense withdrawal. If you like this video, please click like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so next time I post, you'll be first to know. And finally, go back into part 1 and start watching the series from the beginning. It makes a logical sense. Thanks for watching.